Hi, I'm Laura Cox Kaplan. You're listening to She Said, She Said. Brittany Underwood is the CEO of global impact jewelry company, the Akola Project. Brittany's life trajectory was altered forever when in college she met a Ugandan woman named Sarah. The power of that meeting inspired Brittany's passion for helping others, and the impact thus far has helped create both financial independence and economic prosperity for women in Uganda as well as in the United States. Akola, when translated, means she works. Brittany is a woman who is raising the bar for social impact businesses. Her story's a powerful one. She's a living, breathing example of the power of an individual. Her story also illustrates the value to society when women are given the support to lift themselves and their children out of poverty, giving them tools and the education that they need to invest in themselves so that they can then in turn invest in others. There is a lot that we can learn from Brittany's story, and I am delighted to welcome Brittany to She Said, She Said this morning.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to be here with you in Dallas, Texas. So thank you for making the time.
Absolutely.
You created what is now known as a cutting-edge model for social impact. But that's not where you started. I would love for you to tell us the story of where this initial passion came from.
Oh gosh, yes. It's funny with Akola now. You know, this has been going on for 15 years, and so many people date our brand and movement back to our Neiman Marcus launch in 2016, but the story actually began in 2004. So it was, a decade or more before that. And I was a sophomore at SMU. I had no intention of doing any of this. I was, sorority girl, enjoying having a lot of fun, which SMU is a fun school, and not thinking a lot about anyone but myself. And I had two friends who just promised we'd have a summer adventure. And we were going to go somewhere in the world and teach. And I tuned out of the conversation for about a week, and they signed us up to go to Uganda. I found out, and first of all, I didn't know where Uganda was on the map. I did not know it was in East Africa. I learned that, and basically said, wait a minute, I thought we were going to Europe, maybe Eastern Europe, but I was not signing up for, a summer without power or electricity in a rural village in East Africa. And they basically forced me on the plane. I mean, they dragged me to Uganda, and I got there, and I just was completely overwhelmed. I had never witnessed extreme poverty. I got really sick the first week I was there, and I didn't know how to process everything that was going on.
Did you try to come home?
Yeah, I actually had an exit plan, this backup plan with my dad, that he was going to create a family emergency 3 weeks in, and I was going to fly home. I told my friends found out 3 weeks in that I had actually staged that just in case. They still to this day, 15 years later, give me such a hard time about it. But yeah, I had an exit plan. I was like, I'm not staying here all summer. This is horrible. And, it's funny because I was so disengaged that a local pastor that we were working with the first 2 weeks we were there, who was introducing us to the community and just, teaching us about Uganda, he noticed, clearly there was something wrong with my heart, and he was like, oh, I'm going to pray for this sweet girl from America. And he said, I want you to meet a woman in our village who I think will inspire you. So I said, okay, and I followed him up this tiny dirt road to a shack outside of Uganda's capital city, Kampala, and it was there that I met Sarah, the woman who, completely and utterly changed my life. And I walked in the door, and she had this roll of bamboo mats in the corner. And I asked her what they were for, and she said, children sleep on these mats. And I thought, oh my gosh, children sleeping on these bamboo mats on a floor, truly the size of my closet. She had for 3 years felt that God had called her to take street kids into her home. So without any way to provide for them, she just let them take shelter. And she would share the little bit of food that her husband gave her each week. He worked in the city, so he didn't even know there were kids living in his home during the week. She'd share that little bit of food for her and her daughter with other kids. So she literally went hungry and let her daughter, which now being a mom, understanding, gosh, it's one thing if you go hungry for for the sake of other people, but for your child to go hungry to feed other children, that's just a level of sacrifice that I had never seen before in my life, and it completely shook me out of my complacency.
Yeah. Talk about what happened next.
Yeah, so just through a series of events, I just had this burden, wanted to help, and thought, what could I do? I'm only 19 at the time, and I'd come back to the U.S., and the initial thought was, well, maybe I can send over some money, right? Just this very Western idea of solving problems, I'll send a couple $100 and they can eat, and I won't feel bad about it anymore. So it started out that way. And then it turned out that they needed a building. They, needed a home for the kids. And they had found a sponsorship program that was feeding the kids and sending them to school. And they needed a building. And I just felt this overwhelming burden of why can't I do that? Why can't I help? Not thinking this is going to be the rest of my life,
right.
Or whatever. Just, 20 years old at that time. And just thought, well, how hard could that be? We'll figure that out, yeah. Right? And so it started as this tiny project when I was in college, to raise money to build this little home for Sarah so her kids would have beds. And by the time I graduated college, it had turned into this massive vision to build a 3-story orphanage home for every orphan child in the whole community. And so raised a bit of money before I graduated, and then realized, which is funny that I hadn't even, connected these dots, that I needed to go over there and make sure the building actually happened. I had to oversee this, right? People entrusted us with their money. And so I moved to Uganda in 2006 with 3 friends who put their post-college jobs on hold. And that was the beginning of my journey in Africa.
Based on how you've described yourself prior to going to Uganda the first time, what did your friends think when you came back? What did your family think? What was their reaction? You had to have had naysayers who were like, this is a phase.
Well, I didn't tell anyone. So I knew that. And I was smart enough to not tell anyone. My best friends at SMU did not find out that I was doing this until 2 years after I had raised the funds, and I was about to move to Uganda and had a fundraiser in Dallas, and I invited them because I just thought they've got to see. I didn't my very best friends because I thought they would think I just completely fell off my rocker.
Well, who was helping you?
Insecure about it. I had my friends at SMU, and then I led a young life group in Dallas, and so I met friends that were already graduated from college that were a little bit older, and we were all on a ski trip, and I hadn't shown anyone. And by this point, I had edited a fundraising video because I was a journalism major, and I thought, the only way I can raise money for this building is if they could just see and hear from Sarah, they would feel as compelled as I felt to give. And so I'd created this video, and I hadn't shown it to anyone. We were on a ski trip, and I just said, I want to show y'all something, and I'm not going to tell you until you watch it. I just want your reaction, and that's it. So I put it in the DVD player. We're in Beaver Creek. I'll never forget. And they watched the video, and we're in tears. And one of my friends, Jen, basically said, I will do anything to help you make this work. And she did. She came alongside me to raise the money and figure this all out. And next thing I knew, I was on my way to Uganda.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Okay, so you started with the idea of an orphanage.
Yeah.
But then you found fairly soon that you needed to pivot.
Yes.
And I'm curious about, was it hard for you to accept that was not going to be the answer, that you needed something bigger? Was that disappointing to you, or was it just more this is a piece in the puzzle?
It was probably the hardest moment in my life, one of the hardest moments. I was 25. We actually had just opened the orphanage. It was late 2008, early 2009.
That took you how many years?
Gosh, 3 years to build. And I mean,
you were
we
there
went
on the
through
ground.
on the ground and then coming back here to fundraise. So I was sort of all over the place. But yeah, mainly on the ground. And
pre-husband, pre-children.
Pre-husband, pre-children. And it was funny. Ironically, CNN got a hold of the footage because we were so young, and it had, these 4 young kids had built this orphanage, and it aired nationally and internationally at the very moment we were like, this is not the right model. And so it's like, great, now we probably could have raised money for like 20 more orphanages at that point if we wanted to, and just knew it wasn't right. And there was a lot of factors that went into that. I think really early on, 6 months even into moving to Uganda, just getting to know the community, getting to know other women, hearing their stories, their dreams, their hopes. Like, they didn't want someone to come in and build a building. They wanted to take care of the kids themselves. That was their passion. That was their calling. That was their role. And so essentially we were taking that away from women by creating a structure to send kids, and also taking kids out of families they could be in. Really what the women needed was an income. They just needed money. If I could have if I knew what I knew now in the beginning when I met Sarah, it was so obvious that like she was fully equipped to care for them. Like, she had a system going, she had the passion, the heart, the space. She just needed some kind of income to make sure the kids were eating, that they were in school, and they had beds. And the downside of a sponsorship program is it's virtually a handout model, right? Like, it's A, generally doesn't continue on, forever. And B, it doesn't, teach women like Sarah that they actually have the ability to figure that out themselves and solve their own local problems, which they're highly capable of doing. So the orphanage model seemed a little disempowering. It cut out, the true caretakers of the kids, which were these women in the village. And also it's just, we had so many tough things happen, like corruption, misuse of the asset. You name it. And, here I'm 25 at this point when this is happening. This was 10 years ago. And I was like on the ground, like just in tears, completely disillusioned, thinking I just spent, my first several years out of college while my friends are in New York getting married, like having fun in a village, figuring this out. And this isn't even the right thing. And did I hurt more than I helped? Like, did I actually create more hurt? And I still wrestle with that. I'm not sure if we hurt or we helped more. And I'll never forget, I went to a mentor of mine in Uganda and just said, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't even know if this has really helped. Like, I'm not coming back. Like, and truthfully, I just don't think Westerners should get involved. Like, there's local solutions here, and what are we doing anyways? We just mess everything up. And he said, that's the problem with millennials. Is he was like, you dive into something with tons of passion, and it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to, and you just quit. And he was like, well, what if you committed to this country? And what if you took everything you learned over the past several years to create a better model, a better way? He was like, what if you committed? And it totally shifted the way I thought about, this kind of devastating, wait a minute, we just built this $1 million orphanage, and I'm not quite sure if it's helping or hurting the community, to what if we've learned so much over the past several years, there's got to be a better way. There's still this problem of orphan and disadvantaged kids and kids who aren't in school and not eating. And yet there's this answer. There's women everywhere who feel like it's their calling to help them. What do they need? What's the real solution here? And that's when it completely dawned on me that it's an income. It's some kind of dependable income that the women need, where they can still be there for their kids, but have the money to provide for them. And that was the genesis of Akola, which means she works.
Yeah. So you came back to the U.S. to work on developing this model, right? You went back to school.
I went back to school. Yeah.
So was it hard to take a break? May not be the right word, because I'm sure you stayed very connected to what was happening on the ground there. But still, going back to school, that can be a tough decision to make, regardless of what the circumstances are. You've been in the workforce for a while, once you've launched your career, and then you decide, okay, I want to go back to law school or get an MBA, or in your case, work on international development, right?
Absolutely.
How hard was it to make that decision?
It was really hard. I think I was so burned out, and I didn't realize how burned out which I think generally happens. Once you hit the wall, there's a whole span of time right before you hit the wall that isn't very good, and you hadn't hit the wall yet, so you didn't know you have to shift. But
the adrenaline was
I was
going.
So burned out emotionally, spiritually, physically, just in every single way, to the point where I wasn't actually very useful. I wasn't in the right mindset even. I just was beyond burned out. And I had a college professor who came on our board, and we call it our fight on the Nile River, which is my favorite. She's an amazing African-American professor who teaches race relations and nonprofit at SMU, helped me form this organization. And she was over there in Uganda when I was probably at my worst. And she basically almost shook me and was like, you need to grow up. She told me actually to put my big girl panties on and go to grad school. And I was so mad at the time because I just, I didn't want to see what I was seeing, and it was hard to, and she literally was like, you need to go and learn more, and you need to grow up, and she was right. I needed both. And really that moment, sent me to grad school. And I was like, I've got to take a break. And those 2 years at Fuller, I think it was 2010 to 2012, we would not be the organization we are if I wouldn't have taken that time away from everything. Yeah. We, had an executive director that was running our programs in Uganda. So I was there and available by phone and checked in a couple times a week, but I really took a break and studied development theory. And wanted to figure out, there's a problem, there's a solution here, but how do we do this the right way? Culturally, what's the right way to enter into these agrarian communities as Westerners? How do we set this up in the right way? And what I learned is, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. If our goal was to empower women so they could care for their kids, it's not just enough to help them generate an income, right? That's step one, but there's a lot more that goes to empowering them to bring their families out of poverty. And it's empowering them through the process as much as it is through kind of the end goal. And that meant, how do we get leadership into their hands? How do we train them to be the teachers, to be the practitioners on the ground, to implement their own programs, to learn how to design them, to learn how to run a business, versus us just doing it, for them. So kind of redesigned, what I wanted Akola to be. And we had sort of in a grassroots way started it in 2007. So we had 15 women several years before I went to grad school. While we were finishing the orphanage, had this realization of, gosh, there's got to be this better way. Had 15 women making jewelry under a tree because we thought, how can we help them generate an income? These women don't have an education, no background, they don't own land, they're in crisis. How can we equip them to have income? And we picked jewelry because it was easy to ship. I had some friends who owned boutiques. It was easy to train women. That little thought, which Neiman Marcus always laughs. They're like, don't tell people that. That little thought went into your whole brand, but it did. And so started with those women. And by 2010, right before I left for grad school, it was this aha moment of not only do we need to figure out how to empower women through the process, which is why I shipped myself off to Fuller, but kind of this second piece that's totally set Akola apart, as a social business, and that was investing in our vertical infrastructure. If women were making, products under a tree, which they were, we could never compete. The quality we could never compete in the global marketplace. People would buy it, as sort of a fair trade charity purchase, but they weren't going to buy it, for every occasion, and we realized if we want to, impact a lot of women, we've got to compete, against top brands in the world. And this has to be as successful as possible, because the more successful it is, the more women we can impact. And so that's when we made the decision to start building the infrastructure for economic opportunity. And we knew how to build buildings because we built the orphanage. So we bought the land. We knew how to do that. We, ground up, built training centers and workshops for women in villages where we were the only tin roof. We drilled 23 water wells because women were fetching water all day and they couldn't work. So we were addressing the barriers to economic opportunity. And meanwhile, I was studying every single international development theorist to try to figure out, what is our unique model to not just, again, help women generate income, but to empower them to become an agent of transformation themselves so they could unlock change in their community with or without Akola. And so I came back in 2012 with this great model. And I'll never forget, I had like 6 binders. I mean, I had like written out all of these theories that I wanted us to, manifest in Uganda. And I dropped it on our chief impact officer's desk and basically said, like, can you build this out? And she took that and just recreated it and built our development model over the past, 8 years. And it's a model that not only helps women generate income, but it truly brings their families out of poverty. So it's been fun to test and refine that. But yeah, it all started with a professor telling me to put my big girl panties on and go to grad school. So
it's really good advice, and you were open to it.
I didn't have a choice. Like I hit that wall so hard. I mean, I've hit it several times over the past 15 years. Several years ago, which I'll talk about kind of later in this journey when we launched their Neiman Marcus, I hit it again. I think I'm one of those people that until I hit that wall, man, I'm gonna go as fast as I can, and it's gotta almost break me to get me to kind of pause and step back. But that was such an important time in this journey.
So if you had to sort of simplify this for the audience so that they understand what the individual components are to the model, walk me through what that looks like, and also why jewelry?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, that was an artisan trade, so there were already skills that existed,
right.
but why jewelry and not something else?
Basically how our model works is we're a hybrid. So we have a for-profit and non-profit component of what we do. We have a for-profit benefit corporation, a business that basically creates designs and does the marketing and sort of the infrastructure for the brand, so we can sell a product, right? So our Akola brand works with Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, now Nordstrom as well, and we create jewelry collections, market them to the retailer, and they buy product. Once they buy the product, we then create a purchase order that goes to our manufacturing business in Uganda that we've built, over the past 10 years. That's fully staffed by women in crisis, and they produce that order for the for-profit business. And then we have Akola Academy, which is our nonprofit social service provider, and that truly is, it's the heartbeat of what we do. And our Akola Academy programs do all the things that I talked about. They're designed to empower women through the process, to take a woman who's in abject poverty in a crisis situation and actually train her in some, very technical skills to make jewelry. We don't just assemble jewelry. Our women hand make beads, they hand cut horn, Akola cow horn, they create raffia tassels, from scratch. Like, they're not artisans. They're women who were in a dire situation with an average of 10 dependents who they couldn't care for. Our Akola Academy programs really bring them from that situation to a woman who's able to show up at work, and who's ready. And then Akola Academy wraps around that woman when she works for Akola to ensure that she has all the training and the classes she needs to learn how to use her income to actually create change. Because we realized back in 2010, we had, 1 year where 5 women died of childbirth in our program. And we thought, how in the world is that the case? They're receiving a living wage. Like, they had the money to go to the clinic.
And there was a clinic.
And there was a clinic. So why did they die in their homes? And it turned out they either had superstitions around going to the doctor, or they didn't even know there was a clinic 5 miles away. And that's when we realized, this is actually almost irresponsible to help women in these kind of situations generate an income if we don't teach them how they can actually use it to make their life better, their maternal health, how they can use it to strengthen their families, what their options are for school, how they can, save and create other businesses with that income to create greater levels of sustainability. Like, all that's so important. That's what Akola Academy does. And again, that's what completely sets us apart from other social businesses. Because most social businesses, do what we do, which is, market a product, design it, sell it, have some kind of group produce it, mostly like an artisan group in most cases. And that's great. And they're helping, artisans create a wage. And that's important. But in our case, our target was a crisis population, not artisans. It was the women, who had all these orphan, disadvantaged kids and couldn't take care of them. So it required so much more than that. Not only creating that vertical infrastructure, but those really intentional programs to really bring the family out of poverty.
Talk a bit about sort of the flip side of this and the women who are coming out of really horrific situations, either sexual trafficking or prostitution, or maybe they've been in prison. They are part of your fulfillment center model here in the U.S. Talk a bit about those women as well.
Fast forward, I went to grad school and came back with this new model, and we had built our manufacturing business in Uganda to serve women in crisis situations. And I had this amazing opportunity to meet the CEO of Neiman Marcus. And this was in 2016. This was if anyone asked, like, what's your big break? I mean, for us, this was everything. I mean, it set us up as a real retail fashion brand. And Karen at the time, Katz, who's just one of the most amazing women I've ever met. She was on her way out. I didn't know that. She left Neiman Marcus, I guess, 8 months after we launched Akola, and she gave me 10 minutes. And she had heard about our story and agreed to meet. And I kind of thought, I mean, a 10-minute meeting sort of a blow-off meeting. It's sort of like, like someone worked really hard to get that meeting for us, and she was like, fine, I'll meet with them. But it was this amazing thing that happened. We're in this, mahogany boardroom at Neiman Marcus. And I just thought, man, I've got 10 minutes to get this story across and to just see if there's any way they could help us get our jewelry up into the luxury market. And I told her the story. And I said, Karen, here's the thing. Not only can we impact women in Uganda, but I believe we can impact women in Dallas with this model as well. And I need a more elevated product to do that. And kind of with like a little bit of tears in her eyes, Karen, it's like you can't totally tell, but it was, she definitely, it impacted her. At the end of 10 minutes, she was like, create a more elevated collection and come back and we'll go from there. And I thought, oh gosh, at least I have my foot in the door. There's a chance. And she was like, I think it's really special that you not only want to impact women in Uganda, but also here in Dallas through your supply chain. And again, our thought was if, women in Uganda could make the jewelry, in Dallas, women could finish some of the top level pieces. They could also run the distribution center. They could package the product, tag it, and which is kind of what we focus on now, potentially they could even sell the jewelry. Could we empower women in crisis situations here to have an income through sales? So it was this idea of this kind of full impact model. And I came back to Karen with a collection, and they launched us in every single Neiman Marcus store nationwide. It was an unprecedented national rollout.
How soon? How long?
4 months.
So from the 10-minute meeting to the launch was 4 months.
Oh, no. 10-minute meeting was January. We came back in April, May, and in April, May, they said they wanted product by July for every store. So keep in mind, like, we didn't even have a Dallas Impact model at that point. Like, we thought, at best case scenario, they would launch us in like 2 stores, test the brand, and, grow into other stores. We had no idea. And every mentor, every, expert in this space that we talked to had no idea that this would end up being a national launch. And so we employed, oh my gosh, that first year, 100 women in Dallas, in our first year. That was our goal for 10 years, but to help package the product and the high-level assembly for the pieces we couldn't do in Uganda, and to kind of get that $100 to $500 price point for Neiman Marcus. And, I was pregnant at the time, and this is like, I think this always happens, especially with women. I've been doing this now for 15 years. Like, we could have had that amazing growth opportunity at any point. And of course it happened when I had a 1-year-old and had just found out that I was pregnant with my second, child. I found out 2 weeks after the Neiman's meeting that we were, expecting our second. And we launched through Neiman Marcus in September, and my son was due in October. Oh. And at this point, we're tiny. We had this huge infrastructure in Uganda. We had 30 people on our team in this manufacturing business. But stateside, there were about 5 of us. Like, we did not have the infrastructure to support a national retail launch. Right. We were just starting to build the brand. And in that season, I still I don't even remember parts of it. Like, looking back, I'm like, that was so crazy. I cannot believe my marriage survived that. I can't believe I actually have a child in the midst of that.
You had baby brain.
I had a baby brain. I wasn't sleeping. I actually had postpartum a little bit because I had 2 babies back to back so quickly that my hormones were going nuts. Akola should have fallen apart during that season, and I personally should have completely. And then a lot of things did. Like we had to. I mean, that was a tough season of figuring it out. Luckily, we nailed Neiman Marcus. We became a top 10 jewelry brand in our first season, which no one expected. We didn't even have a designer at that point. I mean, we just kind of threw this thing together. But man, I mean, we lost board members during that season. Like, it was nasty. I mean, it was just, we grew so much faster than what we were prepared to grow. And again, meanwhile, I'm, had a child 2 weeks after our launch. We had this big Dallas launch, and 2 weeks after that, I had my second son, and I was on an airplane a week and a half after he was born. I mean, pumping under my sweater. I mean, I got to the point where I was so tired that I didn't even go to the bathroom on these Southwest flights. There's 2 men sitting next to me, and I wore a big sweater, and I just pumped sitting in my airplane seat because I was so exhausted and opening these stores and launches in Atlanta and Palm Beach, and
they're still wondering what that word.
I was like, well, the engine's so loud it's a great. I mean, the engine was so loud you couldn't really hear that. I mean, because pumps are really loud, and that season it was our big break, and it also was kind of that second season of just like, I mean, the fire of refinement, just like the first when, the orphanage didn't work and I went to grad school and just had to grow up a little bit. That was the second season of it was the most successful moment of our brand. It set us up to now be in Saks Fifth Avenue and Nordstrom, and I mean, just really expanding our brand nationally and in the luxury and affordable luxury space. But it took a toll. And I think, I can talk about this in a second, but it taught me a lot about balance and motherhood and family, and that you cannot, I think I had this idea that nothing would change. I have kids that I've always, I would do anything for Akola. There was an issue in Uganda, and I'd hop on a plane and I was there, figure it out, fly home. It was my life, and it kind of has to be when you're building something like this. But then you get married as a woman, and then you have kids, and I think until you hit that wall, you don't realize, I can't operate the way I've been operating and have a family,
right?
And something's got to give, and that's kind of been this season for me.
How much, we talk a lot about perfection on this podcast, and for something, a cause, an idea, something this big that you are so passionate about, to turn elements over to someone else in order to make it successful, which you have to do because you can't do it all by yourself. How difficult was that?
I mean, I think until I ran into a wall, difficult, but then suddenly you head into that wall again, which I'm really good at, and you realize I can't do all of this by myself, and I've got to build a team. And I think what was hard is I look back and think, could I have done that differently? That season where we had no idea that Neiman's was going to launch us in every store, and have that huge rollout. I could have never prepared for that or expected it, or so there's nothing I could have done ahead of that. It happened, and I had 4 months our team had 4 months to execute.
And the team was how big at that point?
We had less than 5 people in Dallas, pulling this off.
Wow.
We had to do most of our production for our first season here in Dallas because we couldn't even get gemstones and these kind of higher end materials that we mix with the local materials that our women make in Uganda. We couldn't even get them to Uganda in time. So we produced almost the entire collection here in Dallas with women that we trained from scratch. We contacted 15 nonprofits. They sent us all their women who needed a temporary work opportunity, $15 an hour wage, and employed half the city for that first, but I had to figure that out. So not only do we have to figure out the designs and the marketing and how to launch it with no money as a nonprofit at the time, we weren't a dual structure at that point either. So we had no resources. But we also had to figure out how to produce it all locally. It's not like we just did all of this and sent it to a factory. We were making it and targeting women in crisis because that's our mission. So we didn't want to stray from that. So it was so crazy. And I just, looking back, I don't know if I could have done it differently. I needed to do what I needed to do to get this thing off the ground. But I think what I've learned is with my family, if there's a 3 or 4 month or 5 month season like that, fine. You pull together, your husband helps you figure it out. You work as a team, you get the help you need, but it can't keep on going. There's got to be, you can't run like that with a family that fast for any longer than that. And I think that's what I learned is, this was all happening in 2016, 2017. And, by 2018, I realized like, I have got to create some balance. And that means building a team. And at that point, I think we had built a brand and been so successful in that space that we could finally attract the talent. I think that's why I don't know if I could have done it differently earlier, because I don't think we would have been able to attract the talent that we can now attract, because we have some proof of concept in the retail world. And so now, as soon as we got to that space, my what I was running towards was, how can I build the best team possible so I can get to the point, which I think I'm just getting to now, where I only do what no one else can do. I mean, literally my litmus test to like what I say yes to is, if someone else can do it, it should not be me. And I really only say yes to the things that only I can uniquely do and that I'm uniquely created to do. And that's not a lot of stuff. Like most things most people can do. And so I'm now taking on the role more as founder, and handing over the day-to-day operations to our amazing leader and team that we've built, and focusing on where we're going and how to get there more than running the whole business, which, I'm a visionary. It's not my strength to run a business. I mean, I can see where it can go. I can get the energy there. But when it comes to the execution game, that's not my strength anyway. So I think it was easier to let that go for that reason. But also just realizing like there's a team of people who are much better equipped to execute on this than I am. So I'm gonna let them do it. And I'm gonna do what I can uniquely do. And that's where I am now.
Yeah. Are you beginning to see other sort of similar Akola projects cropping up?
Yeah.
Where other entities are using your model?
Yes. It's really fun here in Dallas and around the U.S. to see other groups kind of adopting this social enterprise model and creating products that not only give back, but like the way they're created, give back and change lives. The kind of that vertical supply chain that creates jobs and opportunity as products are made. Like definitely seeing more and more of that in the marketplace. What I haven't seen, and I think this is going to be the next 10 years that I think we'll see, is the fact that we built our manufacturing business has changed the game. We could not retail at Neiman's, Nordstrom, or Saks at the level that we're retailing unless we owned and ran our manufacturing business. Because if women were making products in an artisanal context, which is considered cottage industry, under a tree, you cannot get the quality. You cannot,
and the price point is lower.
And the price point, you can't command that higher price point. And so I think we're able to target uniquely a demographic of women in crisis, but in a highly sophisticated way. We produce our products so we can sell them from, they sell from $50 to $500. And we're working on a line right now, it goes from $500 to $3,000, and you actually have to build it for that to happen, not just create kind of the artisan partnership model. So I think I've seen a lot of that kind of artisan partnership model the past 10 years. And I think the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of what we're doing, which is, you actually take the time to build the manufacturing base, but target a disadvantaged population. So then you can actually compete in retail and kind of high retail locations and really build a brand.
You've also launched a lower price point brand as well. Talk a bit about the thought process there. You've got a partnership with Walmart,
yes.
As I understand it?
Yeah. So we created another brand called One Bead, One Hope. And it is...
I think these lovely beauties that I have on, which we'll include
yes.
in photographs, I think these are one bead, one
yes.
hope, right?
And it's more affordable. It's $15 to $50. And it uses kind of more affordable materials as well and looks different than our Akola line. And it was in Macy's Story recently, and we're looking at a fun collaboration with Kohl's. Walmart we're doing some fun stuff with, and actually Carnival Cruise Line as well. So we have another brand that's able to create those jobs as well at that lower price point. So our focus is our affordable luxury brand with Akola, but we love creating jobs. So when we saw that there was a gap in the marketplace for that kind of volume retail as well, we wanted to see if we could play there too. Yeah. So it's been really fun.
I would love for you to go and talk a little bit more about putting together markets in places in the world where it is just difficult to do business. And I looked up I think it's the World Bank's model or statistics on the hardest places to do business. And Uganda ranks 127 out of 190 places that are the hardest to do business in.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because not only do we pick, one of the hardest countries to do business in, but we pick the hardest areas in that country to do business. And we don't work in the city. We work in tiny rural agrarian villages where we have to build out the infrastructure for our business. So we literally created the most difficult probably map, but that's our heart, to target, kind of unreached women who don't have access to nonprofit services or income opportunities, and their kids are literally dying because they don't have enough food.
But do the governments put up obstacles in your path which make it even more difficult? I mean, in addition to it being a very remote, impoverished place, sometimes you find that governments will put up big roadblocks.
Yes, we've had to navigate some of those. I mean, the Ugandan government has actually been very supportive of our work. I think a little confused by it at times because we're a for-profit and a nonprofit, so I don't think they can they're like, wait a minute, are you a for-profit or are you nonprofit? And we're like, no, we're both, because that's what we need to do to bring these, women out of poverty. So I think they've had a hard time wrapping their head around that. But they've been supportive, and now we're getting some support, something I'll get to talk about in the next couple months as it unfolds, but through the U.S. government as well. That gives us some coverage over there, which will be really fun to, create this new sector of manufacturing for products like this out of Uganda. So we're excited to become more and more sophisticated as a manufacturer, and one of the bigger ones, in this category out of East Africa. And I suspect we'll have a lot more engagement with the government as we do that. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully that'll go well.
Yeah. So in doing all of this, it's just such an incredible story. Where did confidence come from for you?
Oh, man.
Knowing that you didn't have the answers, but having the confidence to really go after figuring it out. Where did that come from?
The audacity to do it. Just felt like a calling. I mean, I think it came from, my heart, my faith, this just push to, that's always been bigger than me. And I think that's why I think this, at every season, this is so daunting what we're doing. I mean, there are moments where I'm like, how did this even happen? I feel like I'm like, a character in a story that I didn't write or something, and it's always been so much bigger than me. And the opportunities that we've had, I am not strategic enough or smart enough or anything to make any of this kind of happen. And it's always felt like we're part of a larger story. And I think that's given me the audacity, the courage to do it, because I know it's not about me and it's so much bigger than I am. And I think my prayer has always been just like, Lord, help me not screw this up. Like, you're doing something so amazing, and I'm like just a human, and I'm like so flawed. Like, please help me not get in the way of what you're doing. And I think that knowing that it's just bigger, and I think the burden is heavy because it's people's lives. It's not just like we're running a business, and if something doesn't work, like, shoot, that's really hard. The business didn't work. It's like they're women who can't feed their kids, if we're not able to, give them the work opportunity. And that is a heavy burden to bear. And I think I wouldn't be able to carry that if I didn't think that it was just way bigger than me. And I think that is what pushes me every day to, in my case, just be a better entrepreneur and to be a better leader, and to let go when I need to let go, and to get out of the way when I need to get out of the way, and be able to do that, because it's this beautiful thing that I feel lucky to be a part of. And my goal is to just not get in the way of its growth, and to have the courage to continue.
You have two beautiful boys who greeted me at the door when I came in. They are still very young.
Yes.
And so they don't likely have the ability to comprehend what you're doing. But as you fast forward, what do you hope they will take away from the experience that you are having, that you all are having as a family?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that lately. It's funny because I've been trying to explain to my 4-year-old, and he's like, Mommy, why do you have to go to work? Like, why do you have to? And I'm like, oh, buddy. So, I had to say, you know what, Leif? Like, he loves milk and he loves bacon. Those are like his two favorite things.
Who doesn't?
I said, Leif, there's some little kids in the world who they don't have milk and they don't have bacon, and their mommies can't give it to them, and they're hungry, and then he goes into all the questions of like, why is it happening? There's kids that don't have mommies, and like he's just, we really talk about that, and I try to talk about it in his language, and say, basically, if you sum it up, what I'm doing is I'm helping the mommies get milk and bacon so they can feed their kids, and in summary, that's what I do, and so he knows that. And so now when I go to work, he goes, Mommy, you're helping the kids get bacon and milk. And I'm like, yes, that is exactly what. So he's excited. And and he's talked to me and said, Mommy, I want to help you do, like, can I help the little kids too? And, so I think it's been fun to already start talking to him about the work that I'm doing and see that, like, my oldest, like, his heart's so big and he wants to help too and be a part of it. And what that's going to look like in the future is exciting. We have this small house that I built that's actually currently being used by one of our women as a primary school that she started. So it has 200 students at it. But I built it over the years out of raw material. It's on the Nile River, a half a mile from our workshop and training center. And just, it's built out of river stone and, papyrus roofs and all of the, local builders who built our training center. I just, pay them a small amount and do one part of the building. It's still like not totally finished. But my dream was someday, would have this house where my family could spend summers. And my kids, wouldn't think about giving as going on, a quick service trip to help someone else, but as a exchange, as a way to get to know others who are different than them and shape each other's lives mutually. Because I think that's really what Akola's been for me. It's, these women that we work with, like, I feel like they've raised me in some ways. Like I see the world differently because of them. I see my faith differently. I see community differently and my role in the world. They've really taught me what it's like to be a woman. And I want the same for my kids, not just for them to be a part of giving back, but actually learning and creating friendships and community with people who are very different than they are. We live in Highland Park, which is one of the most affluent, zip codes in the country. And with my kids, I want them to be able to, have that experience here, but also feel completely comfortable in a village in East Africa with their friends that they'll make there and see the world in that holistic way. And so that's my hope and my dream for my kids.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
We ask every person who comes on the podcast for a single piece of advice, a life hack, a mantra, as you think about other young women who are listening, who may have a dream, a vision, a cause, a passion. What's your advice for them?
Never, ever, ever give up. It's easy to look at Akola now and it's working. What we're doing is working on the retail side. It's working on the job creation side, on the nonprofit side, but that wasn't always the case. And I think there could have been so many times I could have quit, given up. Every month probably in the past 15 years, there was an opportunity to do that. And I think the only thing that's really set us apart is never give up and always work to make this model better. When something didn't work, we didn't let it bring us down. We just thought, okay, well, let's tweak it. Let's improve it. Clearly this isn't working. So let's innovate and create a better solution. And so I think for any woman at any stage, with kids or, without kids or single or it's just bottom line, put one foot in front of the other, take that first step. Don't be afraid to do it and just have the courage to keep on walking because I think it takes you to amazing places.
Brittany, thank you so much. This is such a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you.
To learn more about Brittany and the Akola Project, you can visit our website at www.shesaidshesaidpodcast.com. There you'll find links to the Akola Project as well as a few photographs from today's visit. You'll also find links to other episodes featuring inspiring women who, like Brittany, are having an incredibly positive impact on others and on the world. As always, thanks so much for listening.